You can get things done in 10-minute chunks. My favorite piece of research that I included in the Brave Learner is that attention in a child is age plus 1 minute.
I remember this, reading this however many years ago that was. And
Wait,
I was
you're
like,
going to have
what?
to, repeat this. Say that one more time.
Age plus 1 minute. So 7 years old can give you 8 good minutes. So why are we doing an hour of math for an 8-year-old? That's insane.
Wow.
8 minutes of math, and then they need a break. They need to go jump on a trampoline, run around with the dog, eat a snack, come back, and then maybe they can give you 7 or 8 more good minutes. We are so brainwashed into the belief that duration equals learning, but learning comes from full attention and engagement. And so the second we push past their natural attention span, we're training them to disengage, be bored, and do sloppy work to be able to keep going after their attention fails. And for ADHD kids, this is absolutely a crisis where we're pushing them beyond their skill set, and then they just start learning more and more how to shut off, shut down, disengage, to the point where eventually they'll just like throw down the gauntlet and say, I will not do this anymore.
If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I love this lifestyle, but sometimes it feels incredibly lonely, we want you to know that you are not meant to do this by yourself.
This is why we started our Patreon community. It is a place for moms who are trying to feed their families well, make thoughtful choices, and just do their best, and to actually connect with other moms who get it.
In our Patreon community, you can ask questions, share wins, vent on hard days, and get real encouragement from people walking the same road.
If you are craving that support and community, we would love to welcome you over on Patreon. Check the show notes for the link, or you can just head straight to patreon.com/Modern Ancestral Mamas. Welcome to Modern Ancestral Mamas. We are Corey and Christine, 2 millennial moms on a mission to bring ancestral wisdom to modern motherhood. Today on MAM, which is our acronym for Modern Ancestral Mamas, we are thrilled to interview the beloved homeschooling mentor, founder of Brave Writer, and author of the transformative book, The Brave Learner. Our guest has spent decades helping families cultivate learning environments that are both academically rich and emotionally connected. Her work empowers parents to trust themselves, trust their children, and infuse home education with curiosity, joy, and real-world magic. In this episode, we dive into what it truly means to create a nourishing learning environment, one where children feel seen, parents feel supported, and where meaningful learning naturally unfolds. But wait, freeze. Before we do anything else, just pause for a second. Go rate the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating, guys. We know you want to. Leave a comment. Tell us how much you love us. The comments just fill our cup up with joy. We just got the most amazing comment yesterday, and it was so sweet.
We'll read it at the end, right?
Yeah, we'll read it at the end. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, and please join our Patreon community. We would love to see you there. It is a great way to connect with us and our community to support the show and get some great bonuses. All right. So thank you so much. And without further ado, let's please welcome today's guest, Julie Bogart.
Okay, hold on. I spilled my tea.
Let
me go grab a towel, and then I'll be right back.
Okay, pause.
Yeah.
Okay, so we start each episode with kind of a roundtable question. So we'll all take turns answering it. It'll be, shorter. And it's just kind of get us all talking and everything. So today's question is, since we all have experience with homeschooling pre-COVID, okay, either homeschooling our own children or being homeschooled, I wanted to ask, what do you think is the difference? What have you noticed as the difference between what parents are doing now and what parents were doing like in the 90s?
Yeah, I love this question.
Specifically.
Yeah. No, I love this question. I think the biggest difference, honestly, is that in the 90s, homeschooling was usually a mom in a living room with her own children. And today's homeschooling environment seems to include a lot more hybrid schools, micro schools, co-ops, group learning. And there seems to be a desire to have a different experience than traditional school, but less willingness to be the one who delivers it. So, or less of a desire to be the one who delivers it. So when I look back to my peers and what we did, we really wanted to become the kinds of educators that would help our kids get an education. Today, when I talk to a lot of moms, they're looking for a group that they can support with their efforts at home, but they don't want to be the one to come up with the program, think about the curriculum, or even grow as an educator particularly. They want to coordinate a homeschool experience, but they don't really want to do it.
What do you think, Christine?
I would say that I probably fall under that camp. I was homeschooled in the 90s from 5th grade until freshman year of high school. And while it was a great experience, I also, I'm trying to think how I can say this. It was also challenging for my mom because she was growing both as a parent and learning to be an educator, which she is an educator by nature, actually. So it's kind of funny.
She's a professor right now.
She's a professor. Yeah. So, but I got the brunt of a lot of maybe some of those like childhood past experiences.
You're also the oldest.
I was the oldest. This is so true. So I was the experiment child, always. And
I mean, I'm the oldest too. I'm 100% the guinea pig in my family.
Yes.
Those oldest children, my poor son. Gosh.
Same. My poor son as the oldest as well. But now as a parent, I did it for 2 years, which I know is not a long time, but I realized I am not the type of person who can be the sole educator. I need more support. And so for this 3rd year with one of my kids who I'm homeschooling, I reached out for more support, and I'm actually loving it even more. It could be just because it's one child and she's my most motivated child. But for me, it's worked out.
I will add that I was a part of co-ops, and we did a co-op with my kids that met weekly, like one day a week, where 100 families gathered, and we all stayed. So one of the requirements of the co-op was that no, it wasn't a drop-off program. Mm-hmm. Everyone stayed all day. We were either teaching a class, volunteering for 2 of the periods, and then the 2 periods additional, you were free to socialize with other moms, and we took turns supervising lunch and turns setting up and tearing down. So I totally agree with you. Doing things totally alone can feel quite isolating. And that is one of the wonderful benefits of this movement having grown to the size that it is. But one of the things that I find repeatedly is this loss of confidence in the parent as the leader of the education. And I think that's the thing I want to address for parents. I'm not against any of those. My own granddaughter's in a hybrid school and a forest school, and I love it for her. And I see so many benefits. But when you're asking what is the difference, I would say that is the key difference. Without judgment, those are 2 different versions, and especially post-COVID. After the pandemic, a lot of people became home educators, not because the philosophy of homeschooling originally caught their imagination. It was that they lost faith in the schools. And that's a different kind of relationship to homeschooling than like back when I was coming through the pike. I read about homeschooling before my kids were even born. I was already interested in it. So it's just a shift in the way that homeschooling has evolved. And I think whenever a movement grows to the scale that it is, and it's gone through the hard journey of becoming legalized by the true radical people who, tackled it in the 70s and 80s, you're going to see a much more diverse expression of how that educational model gets manifested.
Yeah, so my answer was going to be that there's more school at home rather than homeschooling happening now. And it seems to be, I would agree with you. It seems to be from a place of fear.
Yes.
And a place of, rather than a place of joyfully keeping your children at home and being with your children. Not that it's not also joyful to be with your children, but I do think that there's a different mindset in that, especially post-COVID.
You know, can
Go
I
ahead.
comment on that? One
Yeah.
of the things that a millennial mom said to me when I was asking questions about this, she was not homeschooled. And she said, the millennial generation in school was raised with achievement as the goal. They constantly kept emphasizing the importance of grades, of standards, of needing certain performance metrics to get into college, to get a scholarship, to get money. Like there was this feeling of pressure all the time that you were going to fall off of this very important path if you did not live up to these high standards. When I look back to my education in the public schools, I was raised in the 70s, and the model of education back then was experimental. I had just a wildly wonderful public school experience, and I homeschooled partly to recapture how good my public school experience was because it had changed so much by the time I raised kids. So I think this anxiety about doing enough and doing it right may be a part of your generation because the adults at that time changed how education was understood. We had No Child Left Behind, and suddenly the pressure was insane, way higher than when I was growing up. So I want to say that I think some of that you come by honestly. The parents who are schooling at home, they're worried that they're somehow going to miss something and remove an opportunity for their children.
So I have to tell this little quick bit. It's not really a story, but I started homeschooling in 2000, my own children. I was homeschooled K through 12, and then my kids were in a private school, and we had to take them out of the private school because the private school moved, and they were now an hour and a half away, which is undoable. And so I pulled my oldest was in second grade or starting second grade, and then I had a kindergartner, and then I was pregnant. And this was 2000. What year was this? 2019. Had to be 2019. So the summer of 2019, I got your book, Brave Learner, and I read it and over the summer because I knew we were going to homeschool in the fall, and I felt so unprepared. And your book was so freeing to me, and I read it in conjunction with Sarah Mackenzie's Teaching from Rest. And both of those books together just like freed my spirit almost. I was like, I can do this. The other thing that I noticed when I was reading it was like, this was the homeschooling that I had. Like your stories about raising your kids was exactly what my mom was doing at the same time. So I feel like I was reading it. I was like, I think I could be friends with her children. Like I know them. I know these kids. Like,
I believe that.
But I just loved it. And every single time somebody's like, well, how do I start homeschooling my kids? I'm like, let me give you this book. You need to read this book. So Thank you for writing that.
You're welcome.
And I am so excited to have this conversation because I just feel like you have so much heart for parents, and you have so much that you can pour into our generation of mothers and the next generation of mothers who are feeling the fear against the system and who are feeling like we're not doing it right, we're not doing enough. So I would love to get into this, but I first would love it if you would give us a tiny bit of backstory, like how many kids do you have? I know they're all adults, but you don't have to give their ages since they're adults, but they're adults.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, it's a great story, actually. For those who don't know anything about my background, when I was in my 20s, I got interested in being a missionary, actually. And I was in a place for training. I wasn't married. I wasn't even engaged yet. But a friend of my soon-to-be fiance started talking to me, checking me out, making sure I was a good person. And he led the conversation with, are you going to homeschool your kids? This was 1984. And I said, home what? Like I'd never heard those two words combined in my life. That's how fresh the whole thing was. And he launched into all of his sort of anti-government reasons for homeschool, which I didn't care about. But then he pivoted and he started talking about how it creates a tailor-made education for each child. And that really caught my imagination because I had had this really amazing public school experience that felt very free and very immersive, very exciting. And I thought, well, yeah, I want that for my kids. And so before I was even engaged, I was already homeschool curious. But then I got to watch families who were actually living that vision when I lived in Morocco. And I loved what I saw. And so some people say, how did you decide to homeschool? In a weird way, it was never a decision. I feel like it was just the natural extension of having babies and raising them. I was a La Leche League leader. You know, I was very much in that world.
Mom.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I just knew I wanted to be the person who saw the lights go on in my children when they learned to read and learned to do math. And I was a history major at UCLA. I wanted to teach my kids history because I loved it. Like I had that passion about education and this relationship with my kids. And I have 5 kids. My oldest is 38. My youngest is 29. I have 4 grandkids and 1 on the way. So soon to match the number of children I had. And 4 of them are married. And, you know, I think it's helpful to say all gainfully employed. Everybody always wants to know, did they finish college? Did they end up working? And yes, in fact, one of my favorite things about my adult kids is to see that the story of learning is so deeply embedded in them that they cannot stop. They're constantly teaching themselves new things, and they're obsessed with each other, and they just want to talk about what they're thinking about all the time with each other and with their parents. And, you know, that was really the goal for me.
I'm not even kidding. Like, you are basically my mom. Like all the same things. So, but okay. Is Brave Learner your first book?
It's my first published book by traditional publishing. But before that, of course, I had written these Gracious Space books, which are sort of like a secular devotional about being a home educator. And then before that, of course, I wrote all my curriculum. So The Writer's Jungle was the first version of a writing manual that I wrote and self-published. And, you know, it sold 10,000 copies or something. And then I started writing curricula for real. And today Brave Writer has, 300 pieces of curricula. I have a staff that works for me. And so by 2017, really, when I did the pitch, I decided that there needed to be a homeschooling book that wasn't just either radical unschooling or traditional sort of school at home schooling. What I was looking for was that intersection of immersive experience while also staying on top of the requirements, right? Because parents find it hard to escape those. So how can we translate learning into something the kid likes, but that also reassures the parent that they're not leaving anything out or that they're not failing their children?
Yeah. You have to stick with state requirements too.
Well, that's my point. School at home is built from the fear that you're going to fail the state requirements. But most people who homeschool want something a little bit more lively and immersive, and that activates the sort of passion and interest of their children. So the Brave Learner shows how to do that together, how to bring those together and create that homeschool that you actually think you want, the fantasy that kind of lives in your head.
So I have a question that's kind of related, but maybe a little bit off topic, maybe a little bit back towards what we were discussing at the beginning. So one of the things that I've noticed among some of my friends is, and maybe this feeds into some of your comments about fear, Corey, but some of these parents are homeschooling because they feel like their children are not doing well in traditional school.
Yes.
And not because, well, we all know there's a lot of problems with traditional school. But maybe these kids are dyslexic, or maybe they have some ADHD problems, or maybe they are struggling readers, or whatever it may be. And so the parents feel like they're actually not being supported in a traditional school, despite all the supports that schools offer. And so that's why they're pulling them out and trying to homeschool them at home. But what are your thoughts on that? If do you think a parent can do that with a child that's struggling, even if that parent has absolutely no training in, let's say, dyslexia, reading therapies, or, whatever it may be? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I absolutely think it's possible for a parent to homeschool a neurodiverse child without training in neurodiversity. Here's why. Because that parent loves that child more than any institution or even any specialist. That doesn't mean you don't rely on specialists to help you. I've used speech and language pathologists to help my son who was dysgraphic. I hired a reading specialist to help me understand when one of my kids wasn't reading. I think it's the job of the parent to find and curate resources and self-educate on whatever that specialness is about their child. Remember, with my oldest son, I was really sort of pulling my hair out. He doesn't mind me sharing this, by the way. I ask permission always because they're adults and I want to be respectful. But he was the really kind of kid who could not follow like a plan for the day. I couldn't even send him upstairs and say, put on your shoes, make your bed, get your clothes on, brush your teeth and come down. We had to do it one thing at a time, right? Mm-hmm. And so I thought, well, maybe he has ADD. Now, interestingly, because he was homeschooled, I so thoroughly accommodated him that no test he took to diagnose him ever came back ADD. But one of the educational specialists that I consulted said, but I still think that ADD strategies would work for him. So I went to the library and I checked out a whole bunch of books. Now you guys have the internet. You can just go online. And I started applying the strategies and they worked. They were like, oh, these kind of work. And at 26 years old, he finally did get a diagnosis and went on Ritalin. He felt that that was incredibly helpful to him at the time. But during his years of homeschool, because he was at home and because I could accommodate him, we were able to curate a life where he actually still loves learning. He doesn't hate learning. He's self-taught him. He is self-taught in computer programming, and that is his career today. And he's a specialist and does an amazing job. But he quit college 3 times. He didn't finish high school. Leaning into that, keeping a good relationship with your child, protecting him from teachers for years telling him that he doesn't have a good will or that he needs other care. I'm not saying this is a blueprint, but what I am saying is, as a parent, you can actually make that difference in your child's life and you can gather the resources you need. And because you're in charge, you're not trying to get the people in charge to do what you think they should do. You feel a lot of empowerment. And I think that's why a lot of people with neurodiverse kids homeschool.
So how did you pull that off with 4 other children? Like you had, I mean, I have a kid who is, I have no idea. I mean, she has ADHD tendencies. Let's say that. She has no, diagnosis of any sort, but my husband definitely has ADHD, has been diagnosed, leaves socks on the floor. And,
you mean that's just not a normal husband?
Is it? I don't know.
Is that not a normal human? I leave socks on the floor.
I mean, yeah, totally. This is just all my kids. Socks are everywhere.
No, my husband leaves socks on the floor. Anyway, this has been like this early on in our marriage. That was a fighting spot. And so that's our joke all the time is the socks on the floor. But I've since gotten over and I just pick them up. But what I was saying is that I have one kid who tends that way. And I then also have 3 other kids who also need whatever attention they need. And making things work specifically for one child and giving her extra attention when I also have there's balancing there that I'm not sure I've quite figured out yet.
That's such a valid question. And something that homeschoolers often don't consider is that you can rotate attention. You don't have to teach all 4 kids on the same day. You can have some kids.
Day. Okay, talk more.
You can have some kids who are just like playing with Legos and dress-up clothes all day while you give devoted attention to that child who really needs it. And then the next day, that child gets to be on the computer doing what they want while you're focused on the ones who all get along and can do the program. I used to have two of my kids who were younger, they were in like a movie phase where they just watched a 2-hour movie every day in the morning while I worked with the 3 older kids. And then in the afternoons, I would play with them, and the other 3 were off doing their own thing. I had a child who could not do writing during the day because he was so distracted by our bird feeder. He was our birder. I'm a birder. And one day I was like, oh, wait, maybe if I do this with him at night, it'll go better because the windows will be dark. And sure enough, so we just did writing at night. This was my dysgraphic child. I've done stuff on the weekends with children who struggle because the other kids are, being taken care of by their dad or they're at sports or whatever. And I can like do a whole project in an afternoon, and it's fun because they have their undivided attention from their mother. I think we have school in our minds all the time, and we think 6 subjects a day, all 5 children, an hour each subject. That's impossible. That's not homeschooling. Homeschooling is meeting the unique needs of each child across the subjects, and you can divide that up any way that you want. And you have so much time. You are not doing 6 hours of school a day with each child. You don't need to. You can get things done in 10-minute chunks. My favorite piece of research that I included in The Brave Learner is that attention in a child is age plus 1 minute.
I remember reading this however many years ago that was. And
wait, you're going to have to, repeat this. Say that one more time.
Age plus 1 minute. So 7 years old can give you 8 good minutes. So why are we doing an hour of math for an 8-year-old? That's insane.
Wow.
8 minutes of math, and then they need a break. They need to go jump on a trampoline, run around with the dog, eat a snack, come back, and then maybe they can give you 7 or 8 more good minutes. We are so brainwashed into the belief that duration equals learning, but learning comes from full attention and engagement. And so the second we push past their natural attention span, we're training them to disengage, be bored, and do sloppy work to be able to keep going after their attention fails. And for ADHD kids, this is absolutely a crisis where we're pushing them beyond their skill set, and then they just start learning more and more how to shut off, shut down, disengage, to the point where eventually they'll just like throw down the gauntlet and say, I will not do this anymore. And if they're 14 or 15, it's over. They're bigger than you. You can't make them do anything. Mm-hmm. So it's training us to pay attention to attention, and then rotating kids, giving free time. Free time is critical to children. Mm-hmm. Free time matters. It teaches. You want them to learn the skills? Great. Do it in bursts. Do it in short lessons. This is where Charlotte Mason's philosophy of education is so valuable.
So how do we do that? Sorry, how do we do that and complete a curriculum?
You will. Right now, you're dragging them over the finish line. You will be shocked. I remember with one of my kids, we were doing a lot with math, and she was starting to really hate it. And I noticed that. And I finally said to her, she was in 7th grade, and I said, listen, it's clear you hate math. I'm dragging you over the finish line every day. You're only in 7th grade. We have so much time to catch up. Just take a break. You don't need to, we're just not doing math anymore. Okay, this is just a certain temperament. This wouldn't have applied to all 5 of my kids. Don't hear this as the elixir or the cure. I'm just telling you a story. A week later,
good caveat.
Yes, it's very important because people always think what I did will automatically apply, but I want you to hear this in the spirit of experimentation. I was like, why am I harming my child every day by insisting she finish math? So I said, we're not doing math. 2 weeks later, she's like, I think I should be doing math. I was like, okay, how much do you want to do? Well, I think I could try this 1 page. Okay, sounds good. We started from what does she have the energy to do instead of what am I insisting she do? And over time, she built stamina to address math from a place of owning it, not of being dragged across the finish line, ruining our relationship and her relationship with math. Similarly, my son with dysgraphia, he got to a point where he would not write. He was left-handed. It was painful. He could not get there. So I said, all right, we're just going to stop writing. You can type, you can dictate to me, I'll jot things down. And then I just started thinking, okay, what do you need as a skill builder for a hand that is struggling to write? Well, you need to hold a pencil more frequently than he is. But writing in those little skinny lines was really hard. So I developed an idea that he loved. He was a gamer. And I said, would it be fun to make your own like geography? Like we could create an island chain and each island could have its own superpower people and a flag and a motto. Well, he could draw an island because it was just moving the pencil in any shape he found interesting. Then I taught him how to make mountains. Then I taught him how to make lakes. So he's like practicing with his hand, but there's no pressure. He didn't have to make perfectly shaped B's and D's and R's. And over time, he's building his strength in his hand. Then one day we're reading this book about birding, which he was obsessed with. And the author, who's an ornithologist, said, when you're starting your bird life list, all the birds you've ever seen, it has to be handwritten in your own writing or it doesn't count. And my son was like, oh, well, then I've got to write, because suddenly there was this very personally meaningful reason to write. Now, he was like 10, and we went to the zoo, and he's writing toucan. He's writing flamingo. I was cracking up because really on a bird life list, you can't include birds you saw at the zoo.
Totally.
But he's 10. I'm not stopping this. I'm pretty excited that he is so committed to getting these words written. And by the time he was 11, every 6 months we'd take a walk and I'd say, do you want to work on writing? And he'd say no. Then we'd wait 6 more months. Finally, one day he came home from his lacrosse team meeting and he's like, Mom, I was supposed to fill out a form and I couldn't do it. I'm ready to work on writing. I said, okay. Whoa. We got him a specialist, and within 2 years he was writing really well and fluently. And he went on, ironically, to a great books program in college, which was all handwriting. I was shocked that that's what he would pick. And today he's an IT specialist. He isn't even trained. Like that is his own choice. He did that. And he reads classic literature. That's his life. I say this to you not because that's a template. You have your own children. You have to be willing to experiment, take risks, take time. This same child, I will tell you, he lets me share this story as well. He got through 8th grade and I was like, he is not ready for high school. So I said to him, hey, what do you think if we just take another year before we start 9th grade? I didn't say, let's repeat 8th grade. I just said, what if we do what we're doing another year? And he's like, I would love that. So we did. And then when he finished high school, he's like, I'm not ready for college. I'm like, great. Go to Europe, see your brother, work. Let me know when you're ready. And a year later, so he went to college at 20 because he did 4 years of junior high, 4 years of high school, and a gap year. I think we need to stop all this pressure of imagining that we have to match the journey that school laid out. That's one of the great gifts of being a home educator.
Mm-hmm. That's almost hard to swallow, though. Like, even from somebody who did not grow up in the traditional school system, it is hard to swallow that we're not done at 18, that we're not, or that we're, in 7th grade, you're not doing pre-algebra, and in, I don't know, whatever, like.
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah.
I want to ask you about that. So what advantage is there to doing a subject when you're not ready and you hate it? How does that prepare you for life?
I mean, aside from like, sometimes we have to do things we don't like.
Do we? When? When are you doing something you don't like?
Yeah, I have to clean the toilet.
Well,
okay. Well, okay. But you don't.
Wait.
You value it. You don't.
Okay.
There are people who don't. There are people who hire it out. We only do what we want to do. So if we're thinking like math, for instance, and we're like, okay, you have to do this in order to get into high school or college, whatever. And your child ends up doing it. They're doing it to please you, not because they value math. And when we say, well, I'm doing things I don't like to do, what we're doing is we're casting a vision of the future where somebody else's coercion is the best model of living. Is that what we want for our kids? That we're raising them to feel that coercion is the right model for their lives?
Oof, you're so right. This is deep. Wait, okay, I'm devil's advocate.
Great. I love it.
Yeah. What about the parent that is working 2 jobs to sustain their family, and let's say they don't like one of these jobs, but they have to because they have to put food on the table and a roof over their kid's head. How does this work as far as like, you don't have to do what you don't like, or you don't have to do what you don't want to?
So when you're saying that, that person chose to have children. Think of it this way. When we say this to our children, sometimes you have to do things you don't like. And then we show them weary adulthood. I'm working 2 jobs to put food on the table. I don't like it. Why would that child want to grow up? They are going to now put on the brakes harder than possible to make childhood last as long as possible, because the only vision they have of adulthood is weary responsibility that they don't like and have to do. When instead, the reframe for the adult could be, I love you so much, I'm working 2 jobs. And I'm finding a way to create a life for us that is magical and wonderful. And I gladly go to this job. And even though I didn't think I would like it, here are the things about it that I value. We use this duty thing to shame and coerce people instead of recognizing our own agency. I remember being on an email list for homeschooling years and years ago, and someone was complaining about how she wanted her kids to pitch in with cleaning the house and doing the yard work. And this woman wrote back and she said, who bought the house? And the person's like, well, I did. She's like, you know, your children had no choice in the size of the yard, the scale of the house, the number of pieces of furniture. They had no choice. And you're like, but you owe it to the family. She's like, what if you reframe that as, I took on all this responsibility. How am I going to set up a life where my kids can participate, but it isn't on them to make me feel good about my decision to buy this big house or this small house or this big yard or this small yard? When I heard that, here's how it shifted for me. I started seeing my kids not as people I needed to train to be responsible, but as active participants I wanted to recruit. So I started asking for help instead of assigning chores. And I remember this one time I was in the kitchen doing the dishes. It was right after I had this massive revelation. Oh my gosh, they didn't buy this house. They didn't buy this number of dishes, you know, all the things. And I was doing the dishes and I yelled out to they were like early teens, my youngest kids at that point. And I said, hey, if anyone has some free time, I feel overwhelmed. I would love it if someone could help me with the dishes. My daughter's like, no, don't want to. And my son was like, yeah, me neither. I was like, okay. So I went on, washed the dishes, put them away. Next night, I made another request. Anyway, after about 2 weeks, my son Liam, who was like 14 at the time, he's like, yeah, I can help you. I'll hop up. He hops up from the computer, comes over, helps me finish the dishes. I was like, that was so nice of you. Really made it easier for me. He's like, yeah, no problem, Mom. 2 weeks go by. He's now pitching in. And one night, I'm like, getting ready for bed and I'm about to just do the dishes without asking for help. And he goes, Mom, go to bed. I'll just do them after I'm done gaming. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you don't need to do them every night. It was like a complete shift in how the energy felt in our family, right? Now I had to live with choices. I thought to myself, okay, if I don't want to do a lot of dishes, what could I do to change this for me? Well, we could use paper plates for a while. I could give each child one dish and just say, here's your dish. I don't have the energy to do all of this. So this is your dish. You use it for all your meals. You can use it dirty or clean. I don't care. I made lunch for years in one of those chip and dip containers. And all it was tortillas with beans and cheese. And I put sour cream and salsa in the middle. That was lunch every day for 15 years because I didn't want to wash dishes or think about lunch. And I was like, if you want a different lunch, feel free. But this is what I'm providing. We spend so much time shaming our kids into a worldview that we barely like ourselves instead of actually problem solving for the issues. And that's really our job as adults, because the vision I want my kids to have of their future is that it is glittering with possibilities, that becoming an adult is awesome. You can stay up as late as you want. You can watch whatever movie you think is great. You can decide if you like the job or not. You can decide to have kids or not. I have kids who don't want kids, right? Like there needs to be that level of agency in their lives. And it starts in childhood.
Fascinating.
I'm mind blown. I'm like, wait, can we go back to the chore thing? I don't know.
I love talking about chores.
Yeah, I don't know what string we should pull here, Corey, but I feel like I need like 5 minutes to process everything you just said because I love it. And I'm also trying to think how it can work in my own home and also so confused at the same time.
It's a little terrifying. And I will tell you this. We did have like a Saturday morning time where everybody took one little portion of the house and cleaned it up. So we did do that. But everyone was. I was, my husband was, each kid, we just divided up the house. There were 7 of us and we took turns. They listened to their radio shows or their audiobooks or whatever they had at the time. And I was not a stickler, like do the best you can. I wasn't in there like, go back in there. You didn't do a good job. Squirt bottles are really popular with young kids. As they get older, free them up if you can. Let them work jobs outside the home. They shouldn't have to clean your house for the rest of their lives. Make really reasonable demands. Like I used to make dinner, so my husband and the kids did those dishes. Eventually I was divorced. Suddenly it was all on me. That's when some of this transition was happening. But during those years, there was sort of a family spirit. I think where it feels oppressive, it's when like the child is doing the chore for their own good when they know that's bullshit. They know it. It's not for their own good. They're not going to be better at taking care of their house because they did a chore for you. If they're doing a chore for you, you need to actually say that's what's happening. I can't do it without you. I know you hate it. I'll get you a Slurpee afterwards. This is how we're solving this problem for now. Pony up. Be honest. When you have your own house, I don't care if you ever clean it. This is the only way I can survive right now. If you have better ideas, I want to hear them. You just got to be honest and stop treating these things like character building. They're not.
Corey's speechless.
I'm speechless. Well, because I had this whole conversation with my daughter the other day, my ADHD tendency daughter, and because I walked into her bedroom and it couldn't even walk into her bedroom.
Sure, right.
And
of course,
I bought her a little sewing machine not too long ago because she loves to sew.
Love it.
And but she had scissors in her bed and an X-Acto knife in her bed.
Yeah, that's not good.
Pins in her bed. And I'm like, holy sugar. Like this kid is going to lay on this stuff at night, or she's just going to like sweep it off onto the floor and then she's going to step on it. And then we're going to like end up in the hospital in the middle. I was like, this is terrifying to me. So in that regard, I'm like, no, man, like you got to go pick up your bedroom. Like you have to have, like, it has to be safe. This is like
for
pure
sure.
safety.
No, for sure. Or if they have food in there, you don't want it rotting. Like those things are true. But what if we go at it from that level? What if we go into
I
we're
did
like
say that to her. I was like, you can't, this is not safe.
But okay, but what if you said it a different way? I'm going to rephrase
Tell me how
what
else
you
to
just
say it,
said.
because I literally am like.
Here's a better way to say it. Say, oh my gosh, you love sewing so much. I found pins, X-Acto knives, and scissors in your bed. Wow, what a good decision! What a good decision I made buying you that beautiful sewing machine. Okay, so sweetheart. Here's the thing. Can you imagine in the middle of the night, you roll over and the X-Acto knife cuts your back, and then you get up in the morning and step on a pin? What's that going to be like? Help her discover the unsafety. We tend to come from this like adult authority space, and kids fight that because what they're trying to do is learn to have authority over their own lives. They're learning that skill. By the time they leave home, they should really have that dialed in. And the only way they get there is through these logic processes where they can amass the information that helps them make good decisions. But if all they're doing is waiting for the authority figure to either catch them or dictate to them, they are not developing that autonomy. They are trusting other people. So the biggest gift you can give your kids is narration. For instance, whenever I would walk in the house down this one hall with shoes and socks the whole way, and I hated it because I would always trip, the dog would trip, it's like a mess.
Yeah.
And so I used to say, get these shoes out of the hall. Are you expecting me to pick up after you, like the normal mother thing. So one day after I made this pivot, I just started narrating. I would walk in and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I got to be careful. There's a clog. There's a boot. There's a shoe. I'm tripping. I hate this. I feel like yelling at all of you guys right now, and I don't want to do that. It's really hard for me when there are shoes in the hall. I don't give any instructions. I just narrate my experience because we need to allow people to witness the impact of their behavior, but we don't have to dictate it all the time. And you could, at some point, sit down with those kids after a week of narrating and say, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. Can we talk about this? How can we solve this problem so that you don't feel annoyed that there's nowhere to put the shoes and you can never find your shoes? And I don't feel annoyed that I'm tripping in the hall. What are we going to do about that? That's so different. But we come from this space of dictating all the time. And I think our kids become deaf to it over time. They stop listening.
Yes, of course. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I'm going to have to listen to this episode like 10 times. No, it's brilliant. It's so true though, because you're right that I feel like it will change your relationship with your kids, because right now I feel like oftentimes, not everybody, I'm just speaking out of personal experience, but I'm in a relationship of nagging.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes, right. And nagging becomes wallpaper. So then you have to raise your voice, and then you have to say meaner things to get their attention. And I know you don't want to do that.
No.
I know you don't. I wrote about this in The Brave Learner. There's this moment where I was doing schoolwork at the kitchen table with the kids, and they start tickling each other and then petting the dog and then kicking their feet under the table. And I could feel my anxiety building. Like, I've created this wonderful morning for you, and you're just goofy and silly and stupid.
Yep,
and I need you to not be goofy, silly, or stupid. And I felt it mounting. And then I just thought, I can walk away from this table. So I did. I walked away, left them in their silliness, went to the center of the living room floor, sat down. The dog came to me and I just started petting the dog. I said not a word. And after like 5 or 6 minutes, they're like looking around, where's mom? And then they saw me. And then they came down from the table and they all sat around me and the dog. And then we all just started laughing. And then I was like, are you guys ready yet? Is it time? Should we do copy work? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, great. Glad you're ready. Like, we're so confrontational when we could just take care of ourselves. You could literally just go get your phone and a cup of tea and scroll. And they're like, what are you doing? I don't know. It doesn't seem like anyone's up for homeschool today. And there's this really interesting discussion about what's happening in our government. And I just want to read it. So let me know when you're ready. Like, just
wild.
Yeah.
I don't,
Turn on
I think
TV, watch a movie. I used to watch Jane Austen in the middle of the day, like, okay. And then they fell in love with Jane Austen.
Man, if I could just watch 5 hours of Pride and Prejudice all day.
Totally. Can you imagine? I'm just going to go upstairs and watch Pride and Prejudice. You guys figure it out.
Do it downstairs. Do it in front of them. That's what I'm saying. Live like a human being in front of your children. If you are in a binge moment over Pride and Prejudice, do it at 11 in the morning, right in front of them. And say, they'll be like, wait, what are we doing? I don't know. I am hooked on this show. You're welcome to watch if you want, but this is what I'm doing today at 11 every day for the next 5 days, because I got to see how this ends.
Oh my gosh. Wait, okay. I want to, whoa.
This whole episode is just going to be Christine and I mind blown over here.
Yeah.
We need that emoji just on our face.
Yeah, seriously. Okay. I know that you also talk about critical thinking. So my cogs are starting to spin slowly, my hamster wheels. And I'm wondering if this is kind of a roundabout way for how you would say you are developing critical thinking in children. Maybe talk a little bit about that. Like,
yes, absolutely. So part of what we're trying to teach our kids is how to think through the reasons they're doing anything, right? And I will just tell you this, a lot of us, you know, we're in authoritarian structures, might have been in patriarchy. Like, there's all kinds of systems in place, especially for women, that make you doubt your own knowing, right? So what I wanted my kids to have when they were growing up was the ability to experiment with thought puzzles. Like, If I don't do math for 2 weeks, how will I feel at the end of that? If I read this story, who do I get to talk to about it the way I want to think about it, not the way somebody else wants to think about it? If I'm trying to problem solve, let's say how we share the computer, because back then that's what we did. We had one computer and everyone had to share it. We experimented with like 6 different systems. This is how you grow a critical thinker. It's through the actual activities of daily life combined with education. It's not just the ability to identify foreshadowing in a novel. It is all the ways that kids problem solve on their own behalf to make a right side up understanding of the world that they can rely on for themselves and to know how to make decisions. And they can only do that if they have the freedom to make bad decisions. That's part of the problem. We don't want them to, but they need to.
So how do we give them these opportunities to work through these things? I mean, I know, giving people opportunities to fail is not a bad thing, but how do we give them these opportunities to work through these things safely?
There's no safety here. Get away from that. People are going to break arms. They're going to lose a year of work.
Sleep on an X-Acto knife.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want her to sleep on an X-Acto knife. You are her mother. You did the right thing by telling her to get that out of her bed. I just want to confirm that. You did the absolutely right thing. Yeah. I don't believe that parents stop being the leaders of their family, but it's different to provide your experience and your wisdom and your understanding. So for instance, with my son, when he didn't want to write, I would say to him, writing is really important. There will be a day that you need it. I know it's really hard for you right now. I want to make it as pain-free as possible. Are you ready to try one of those strategies? And then he would be like, nope, I'm not going to do it. Right? Another time, I was going through a divorce and I asked him, are you willing to keep doing homeschool? It's going to need a little more independence because I am not the person that you need right now. He's like, I am not. I am not willing. I said, then I am making the executive decision you're going to school. He's like, okay. He hated school. He went because I'm the parent. I'm the leader. I did make that decision, but I didn't require him to be happy about it. We made all kinds of strategies. I'm like, just get a 2.0. If you finish early, you can go to Europe. It was like a business negotiation. Here's how we're going to solve this problem. It wasn't for your own good. I have decided on your behalf, you have to do this and be glad about it. It was, I know this is not what you want. So giving some context, helping your kids understand what you're asking of them, what their role is, what their participation needs to be. That's your job as a leader, but then they're going to have all their thoughts and feelings, and you've got to care about those. They are a part of the conversation. You can't just treat those as irrational. And that's how it starts. It starts with my child from behind their own eyes, inside their own body, has this perspective for a reason that makes meaningful sense to them. I hate math. I don't ever want to do it. Okay. Let's explore that more. Let's find out where that's coming from and what that means and what that feels like and what you even think the word math is.
So let's get back to use the math as a example. When I was, because I was homeschooled all the way through high school, and our state requirements, my mom was able to finagle it essentially, where I only did 2 years of math in high school, and then I ended up doing like logic or something, and because I just hated it, just hated it, and but then I got to college and decided that I was gonna make costumes for a living, and realized there's a lot of geometry in that. I bet, and kind of was like, shoot. Like now I have to figure this out, and it's a lot harder because I didn't do it a lot in high school. I mean, I did end up figuring it out, but there was like a steep learning curve there.
Sure. I mean, that's true, right? We all have those moments.
Is it just because, you just kind of go with, well, now it's important to you, so now you're going to figure it out?
I mean, for sure. I have 5 kids. 3 of them took pre-calculus and did well and don't use it. 2 of them didn't take pre-calculus and had to teach it to themselves in their 20s for their careers.
Mm.
The 2 who didn't want to do it in high school. The 3 who did it followed the expectations and ended up 2 are therapists and 1 is a human rights lawyer. None of those needed that math. You're rolling the dice all the time. They wasted valuable life points on learning pre-calculus. Valuable life points. They could have been doing other things. We never think about that.
Yeah.
It's an exchange all the time. It's an energy exchange. If you're the kind of temperament that wants to be careful, then maybe that's a valuable exchange. You're like, well, just in case. But like those 3, I knew them. They weren't going to ever use it. It's just they liked the idea of fulfilling the high school requirements. Okay, well, then maybe that was good. One of my daughters told me recently, I wish I had really just followed Noah's lead and not done all that, because my oldest refused. But he's the one who's a computer programmer. That guy uses high-level math every day of his life. He taught himself. I don't know what your kids are going to do. Neither do you.
Right? That's the
point.
And
you don't even know what you're going to do. My mother talked me into learning Spanish in high school and junior high because we lived in California and she wanted to learn Spanish. I got to college. The first thing I did was sign up for French because that's what I wanted. So I didn't get the benefit of junior high and high school French. I had to start from scratch in college. I went on to live in France, live in Morocco, live in Central Africa, used French to my heart's content. Started in college. That's okay. It's okay.
It's not too late to learn something.
I mean, aren't you learning now?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean,
never too late.
100%. Like even with this podcast, like we've had so many things where we're like, I don't have any idea how to do that.
That's right.
Know?
Oh yeah, we're literally learning.
That's why I said do it in front of your kids. I went to grad school while I was still homeschooling, and they saw me studying and highlighting and copy work for New Testament Greek. Like they were aware of what it looked like to be a student. And before that, they were aware of what it looked like to be in love with learning. I learned guitar. I learned all about art history. I got interested in Jane Austen. I started reading classic fiction. Like, live your passionate life of learning around them. I started a business. They saw me learn how to run a business. The role model for life, I've shared this in other places, is that you need to make adulthood look awesome. If you make adulthood look awesome, they will be fine, because then they will know they can teach themselves anything to have that incredible life that they see the adults that they love the most living. If you look like you got all the way through college and the only thing left now is to enforce chores and remind them that people work hard and they don't want to, Peter Pan, please. I would never want to grow up.
Yeah. So I have a story that I was going to share that is just an absolute, this was my total fail. It was last night, literally last night. My husband comes in, he's after work. He's like, hey, there's a new Ken Burns documentary about the American Revolution. We should watch it.
Yes.
And I was like, cool, let's watch it. So we all sit down after dinner. We start watching it. Mind you, we had studied the American Revolution last year.
Okay.
I love American history. I find it fascinating. I love, like, you know, how we came to where we are and like everything that was happening in Europe that, like, you know, influenced what was happening here and all the things. I'm fascinated by it. And we're sitting there watching it. And I keep looking over at my 14-year-old and I'm like, hey, you remember learning about this? You remember learning about how George Washington was the first, or was fighting for the British in the 7 Years' War first before he became an American, you know, general? And my son's like, no. I kept saying it. I was like, do you remember this? And he's like, no. Do you remember this? No. And I was like, come on, like nothing. Like I wasted my whole year last year. And my husband looks at me. He's like, chill, just enjoy the movie. And I was like, what? I was like, we can just sit here and like enjoy this without like having a schooling moment. He's like, just shut up.
I mean, the problem is kids don't retain what isn't meaningful to them. And history for most kids isn't, because they haven't lived long enough. It becomes really interesting to homeschool parents who are 35 and above. Suddenly they're like, history is my favorite subject. But if you think back to high school, most people
I loved it in high school.
I did too. I was weird. But the vast majority did not. there is a feeling of, if you haven't even lived 2 decades, it's very hard to telescope that timeline and to really appreciate what's going on. And they're so interested in what's happening in their present tense lives because everything is a first because they're young. So history, we learn it through repeat exposure. So you laid the foundation. Now you're watching a movie. He's going to hear about it again. There will be a day when he votes and it'll suddenly have a different, think about like studying biology and learning about like the human body versus when you got pregnant.
Yeah.
How much more interested were you in biology when you were pregnant or trying to learn to orgasm or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like that is a totally different feeling about biology than just sitting in a class, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Like, what, right? Like you have these little tidbits and then eventually you circle back over it. All learning is like this spiral effect. And you don't retain it until you've encountered it like 7 times. So your job is to lay the feast of ideas out there, see which ones catch, watch your kids build skill on top of it. But, I feel like I'm still learning. I'm in my 60s.
For sure. Yeah.
So how do we, if we haven't been doing this style of homeschooling, or if we're new to homeschooling, or if you're not even homeschooling.
Yeah. For the listeners that aren't even homeschooling as well. Yes.
Yeah. Like how do we shift our homes to incorporate this?
So you've heard of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. In Brave Writer, we always include a 4th R, and it is relationship. And I like to think about relationship in 3 ways. There's relationship to self, relationship to the subject, and relationship to a loving person who can help you open that subject. And so whether or not your kids are in school, you can do this for a child, even if they're in school. My mother did that for me. It means having this sort of loving gaze at both the child and the school subject and taking your gaze off of the sort of outcome-based, systematized education that everybody keeps putting in front of you as the ideal. So what that means is, can a child develop a relationship with the subject? What would it take to develop a relationship with the subject? When we teach writing, we start by telling kids to write with any implement they can find on any surface. Like literally use the mustard squirt bottle and write something on a paper plate. Use sidewalk chalk. Use glitter pens. Try writing on the wall. I had a friend tell me long time ago, and I thought she was crazy, and then I went ahead and indulged it. She said she let her kids write on their bedroom walls. She's like, she learned so much about what they thought about by reading their walls. And I was like, even after you've painted it? And she's like, paint covers it. So while they're young, let them write on their bedroom walls. So I did. Oh my gosh, their friends started writing on the wall. I'm like reading these long narratives. I've learned a lot. But there is this feeling of empowerment that comes when you sort of transgress the expected and yet invite participation. And so I'm always looking, how can I surprise my kids? How can I create mystery, a little bit of surprise, a little risk, a little adventure, so that they'll build that relationship with the subject? Because I'm telling you, this abstract paper and pencil way of learning is not fun for anyone.
What do you think, Christine?
I have a lot to process.
Give
But
yourself
I'm
time,
loving
by the way.
I'm loving all
Yes.
of this. I really am. There's so many aspects of it that speak to my own personal passions. So there's even if you wouldn't, I know Corey and I really don't like this characterization, but there is the emotional, relational, it's not even gentle parenting, but it's like almost, there's a form of respect to it. Maybe you want to call it respectful parenting. I don't know. There's it's almost a little unschooly as well.
Yes.
There is, but also, we've talked about critical thinking and logic. And so I don't know. I literally, I'm just like,
That's why I think relationship unites all of it, right? Because you have to when we talk about critical thinking, the core feature of it is being able to acknowledge that the internal logic of a human being makes sense to them. If you had the exact same set of circumstances, personality, temperament, biology, socioeconomic, racial, political orientation as that person, you would draw all of their conclusions. So that's how we have to treat our children, that behind their eyes, the feelings and thoughts they're having are logical to them. Once we understand more of what that is and we stay curious and loving about it, we will find solutions to our hardest problems. Where we run into difficulty is when we devalue just how important that is in the child's mind. And so from the adult leadership role, you have a bigger worldview, bigger perspective, longer time frame, and you can provide insight and information your child needs. But you cannot require it in a way that allows them to develop a relationship with that subject if there's some kind of a roadblock. When we teach writing in Brave Writer, we have them start with free writing, where they're free to write anything that comes into their brains in that moment on the page, including, I hate this. This is stupid. My mom's a meanie. I don't want to do this. Because what we're trying to do is hook up the brain with the hand and help them start to understand that they're taking dictation from their own minds. And as long as we tell them what it should be rather than what they're thinking and feeling, they aren't taking dictation from their minds. They are trying to guess what's in your brain and put it on the page. And that is not writing. That is performing for an authority. And that's why they're all using ChatGPT, because AI is better at that than they are. If we want their original writing voices, if we want their original interest in math, we actually have to be that interested in them first. We have to build our relationship with them. Then we have to figure out why this subject is even interesting to me. Like, I wasn't good at math, didn't like math. So the place I started was learning about why math might be interesting to a human being on the planet Earth, because I didn't like it. And how am I going to teach something that I have fear of and anxiety about it and leftover trauma from? How am I going to teach that? I'm just going to transfer all that trauma to my kids. So that's why I'm saying it's relationship to the subject, to the self, and to the other.
Wait, okay, you said two things that I want to pull the thread on. The first is, how do you not transfer that fear and trauma onto your child if you're teaching them? And then the second is, you talked a little bit about AI and ChatGPT.
Hold on. I want to do AI, but we're gonna wait.
Okay.
And do it. We're gonna let her answer the first question, and then I'll say what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Got it. Go ahead. Say that question again if you don't mind.
Okay. How do you avoid or prevent transferring your own personal fears, traumas, past experiences onto your kids when it comes
math.
Yes,
Hate
when
of
it comes
math
to educating them?
Or hate of writing, also a very common one. You have to heal that damage first. And the way that I recommend doing it is actually doing the subject, not just foisting it on your child. So I got interested in reading about math theory. I ordered these workbooks. Mequon Math was what I started with, that used a lot of manipulatives. And I actually did the workbook myself. I tried to learn what was this gap between my understanding of math. I, for instance, didn't realize that multiplication was a shortcut to addition till I was 34. I thought it was straight memorization. And it was Cuisenaire rods that I learned about through a homeschooling discussion group that helped me actually understand what was missing. And the day I got it, I cried. I was like, I cannot believe that all the math tutors I had for my whole life failed to pick up that I didn't understand that. That is shocking to me in hindsight. So once I started to have a better relationship with math, we played math games. I have a book called Family Math that was out in the 90s. We played all kinds of math games. And I started to calm my nervous system around math. Then I could teach it. I also could admit what I didn't know. And I hired tutors when I needed to. I even did a writing math swap with my math friend who was bad at writing and I am not good at math in junior high. Like, I started treating math with respect and treating it as though it must be interesting to someone. And I got to find out why. So you got to heal your own damage. You've got to do the work to get over it. With writing, same thing. I always say, do every writing activity you ask your child to do. Free write with them. Take the risk. Get comfortable again. And then when you approach it, you can admit your own limits. You can say things like, math was really hard for me, and I'm nervous that I'm going to make you not like math. So please tell me when you don't like it, because I never want you to feel about math the way I do. Why not? Just say the truth. You don't have to hide that stuff.
Whew. All right. Julie, I would like you to give everybody the all of your book titles and like where to find you and your curriculums and like all of that. And then I am going to say that we have a whole discussion that we want to get into about AI. I'm very excited to talk about this. This is something my husband and I have been talking about a lot recently. However, we're going to put that on our Patreon. So, you guys, this is a new thing for us. You know this. And we are really excited to bring you more content over there on Patreon. And I think this is going to be a really cool and interesting conversation. So, Julie, you give us where, people can find all your things, and then we will close down this portion of the show and everybody can come join us over on Patreon for the rest of the episode.
That's great. So bravewriter.com is my company, and we teach writing and language arts and how to homeschool in that company. So there are products, there are online classes, and there's a membership community. So go there. That's where everything lives. My personal website is juliebogartwriter.com, WRITER. And all my books are there. The Brave Learner is the one that everybody has referenced in this conversation. And I would call it like the core of my pedagogy around home education or education in children in general. My second book was Raising Critical Thinkers. That's the one I really loved writing because I feel like what we need are better questions. Someone said the subtitle could be 1,001 questions Julie thought you should ask your kids. And I think that's pretty apt. I go through reading, encounter, experience, how to interpret texts, how to look at what you're reading with your kids and how to talk about it. I think it's especially critical in this era of ChatGPT and AI, which we'll discuss. I have a workbook that goes with it called Becoming a Critical Thinker for kids who are 12 and up. And then my most recent book that I'm super excited about and want everyone to read is Help, My Kid Hates Writing, How to Turn Struggling Students into Brave Writers. And here's what's funny about this book. I keep getting these amazing comments that are satisfying as a writer. They're saying things like, I read that book in a day. Julie, it was so entertaining. And I was like, if there is not anything a writer wants to hear more than that they were entertained by a nonfiction book about writing. That just makes my day. So if you're really looking, whether your kids are, in school or at home, this book will provide you so much help in how to support them in growing as writers. So that's it.
I think that's really cool. I think a lot of times I get, I've friends who have kids in public school or private school, and they're like, they kind of don't still see themselves as the person in charge of their kids' education.
Yes.
And I think what you just said actually really highlights that. Like, you are still the person who is
Totally
in charge of your kids' education, and you can still be on top of it and still doing things at home to help them, even if they're not homeschooled.
We hear that all the time about our podcast, in fact, that parents who have kids in school still listen because you still have weekends, nights, homework to get through, and having like a different perspective on what the learning journey is like can really amplify, support your kids in those traditional school settings. I did mean to say too, I do have a Substack, Brave Learning with Julie Bogart, and that's a place where I dole out sort of multiple pieces of information each week. And there's a podcast on it for kids. It's 5 minutes every Monday morning, and I give them one activity to do, and it's directed to your kids. It's called the Monday Morning Meeting.
Oh my gosh. Wait, that's so cool.
It's really fun. I love it. Yeah. And there are, probably 25 so far, and I do it every week.
I'm literally
really
looking
cool.
this up right now.
Don't look it up right now. Focus
I know,
on
right?
what we're supposed to be doing.
Wait, no, but you said it's
everybody.
called the Monday Morning what?
The Monday Morning Meeting, it's on my Substack, which is Brave Learning with Julie Bogart. So if you find that, you'll find the little podcast. It's just 5 minutes a week on Monday mornings. Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Oh my gosh,
okay.
That's so cool.
Christine, did you want to read that
Yes.
review really quickly? And then I will do the where you can find us, and then everybody can go move over to Patreon and listen to the rest of this episode. And we're talking about AI. Gosh.
You sound like a robot.
Totally. Okay. We want to say thank you to K08Ag, who said, all mamas should listen. Your podcast is absolutely amazing. I've learned so much about how to nourish my kids. You are directly responsible for beginning my fresh milled flour journey and so much more. Thank you so much. Yay.
Sweet. Thank you for leaving that review. Let's do Christine. Okay, wait a minute. Christine is at Nourish the Littles. The Littles. Good grief. Okay, Christine is at Nourish the Littles. I am at For Nutrients' Sake. The show is at Modern Ancestral Mamas. You can find the show on Apple and Spotify and YouTube and now Patreon. So thank you all so much for listening. Come over to Patreon so you can hear the rest of this conversation. We love it. It's going to be so fun. All right, cool. Bye.